small thing that I want to talk about as far as time, but it was actually a big thing in a way. And the reason I want to talk about it is I want to, in my life, give an example that just happened to me last week. It has to do with God and how we have to keep these things in our mind, especially as we are in the last days, to have that faith in God and to know God is God and He controls everything. Now, it was an everyday practical thing. This last Tuesday, it was my time to go up to a city about 25-30 miles away from where I live now, where I used to live, and I still keep the same doctor up there, and I use the same pharmacy because I enjoy the area and the doctor. I really love that doctor. I've been going to him for a long time. And the problem is that, like most doctor appointments, I had to make it ahead of time, and he's a great doctor, so he is busy. And when the time came for me to go, last Tuesday, the day before, I was concerned about the weather, because no matter how it would be, I had to go there because I had to make this appointment ahead of time. And I also scheduled several things in the area at the same time. So those things, no matter how it was, I had to go there. And it's summertime. I'm in Miami, Florida. And it's the time of rain, and it's been it's been raining heavily as well every day. And that Monday, just a handful of days ago, it was in the afternoon, and when I walked into the house where my mother was, she told me, knowing that I was going to the appointment to that place the next day, and that I was concerned, about the weather. She said to me the first thing, "Oh, well, unfortunately," she told me, "you have been given a fatal thing because it's supposed to rain especially hard, really hard, the next day." And she said that the day that we were in, it was in mid-afternoon, was the good weather day. It's supposed to be good weather. Well, see, my mother, she is a Christian, but she doesn't have the faith that you should have. She doesn't have the faith of a mustard seed. She has the faith of, you need a microscope to find it. And that's the faith that most people walk into. Now, every time I have gone to this place, every time I tell my mother, I said, I'm going to pray to the Lord, and what happens is I always get, the Lord always blesses me. He always hears my prayers. And why? Because I'm different? No. Because it's the Bible principle. I look to the origin of my existence. I look to the origin of the one responsible for everything. I acknowledge Him. I acknowledge He has complete control over it. And for that, He answers my prayers as long as I abide in Christ. Everyone has the same ability and situation that the Lord will have for them. And the Israelites, that's the main big problem that happened to them, is that they failed to look and recognize God. And my mother's getting a little bit tired of this. She's getting a little bit tired how I will tell her that, and well, the weather completely turns around, and I will have that good weather that I need, no matter how it looks. And it's been especially raining really hard. There's been bad rain fronts that it's the kind of rain where you'll leave your house. You might go 8 minutes away, and out of nowhere comes the kind of rain where you can't see. The rain is going sideways, even in the daylight. And that's what had me concerned, because I had to go over places where people drive very fast on the toll roads that have tolls. But all the same, so even then I knew that the Lord would hear my prayer. Even though the human mind, you struggle with that flesh, you struggle with your carnal mind, because what you see, just 3 days before I had gone to the store, I had gotten trapped in the store a few minutes because of sudden rain. But I know that God can split the sea, God can roll back a river, and his arm is never short. So I told my mother, I said, well, I'm going to pray to the Lord. I'm going to pray for him to give me good weather. And that was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon of the day that was supposed to be the only day that had any kind of decent weather where it wasn't going to rain a lot. Well, within 3 hours, that good day turned to have a lot of rain. And the next day, when it was time for me to go to the trip, and I had gathered my things and I looked out, it was beautiful. The weather was beautiful. There wasn't a cloud in the sky of storm weather, but there were beautiful white clouds and the blue skies. But yet I had a long way to go. It was possible I could leave my house, and by the time I went the whole 30 miles, I could go through all kinds of weather. There was a time I actually had rain fall across the street and not on the other side of the street. That's how the rain can be over here. Well, I have to say, and the reason I'm saying this is that God reversed the weather. The day that was supposed to have been beautiful, when I had lifted it up to the Lord, turned out to be the day of rain. And the day that was set on the weather was the very next day. It was just a few hours away, and the weather stations predicted this bad, especially stormy weather was absolutely beautiful. It was not only absolutely beautiful, but from the time that I left my house, I left in the mid-afternoon, and it was a several-hour trip. The whole way that I drove, everywhere that I went, and this doesn't happen too often, even at nighttime as I was coming back, everywhere, the skies, the road, everything was dry, clear, and beautiful. And of course I praised the Lord. I gave God his glory. I gave God the credit that he deserved. And it makes me in a way kind of lament, because people do not understand the God that we have. And it's really important to keep this in mind, because in these last days, we're going to need to rely on God to do the impossible, to turn the weather around, to open things up for us, which can't happen, which shouldn't happen, which all the people around you are saying by their scientific mind, by their knowledge, is going to be one way, but God can turn it another way. In fact, what happened is that was the only day that had absolutely glorious weather from beginning to end. And the rest of the days that followed, they've all been the typical rainy day, every single one of them. But God, when I prayed that prayer, he turned the weather around that was supposed to have been for that day that my mother said. And he made the day that I requested him to be free, to let me be able to drive on a dry road from beginning to end. And this is the God that we have. And this is what he can do. And he's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And he controls everything. And there's not one thing his arm is short of to do. But we have to have the faith. We have to acknowledge who he is. And we have to abide in Christ. Keep this in mind. I just wanted to share with you the kind of God that we have. He is capable of everything. And once more, my mother got tired of hearing, I'm going to pray to God, and it changes the whole thing, because you would think she'd be praying about it. But see, it doesn't let her stay in a carnal mind. It doesn't let her gossip about the weather. It doesn't let her do what people like to usually do. Oh, the weather. Well, I'm sorry, but this is the God we have. And He is there for all of us in this way. And I just wanted to share with you this blessing that I received from the Lord, that once more, the Lord came through as God. He is God of everything. There's absolutely nothing He can't do. It's just so amazing what God, the control of everything. Look, if He could roll a river up to the very precise minute, surely He flips days around like He did for me and makes everywhere I have to go dry and beautiful. He was so kind to me, so loving. He not only made it dry, but He gave me beautiful visage everywhere I looked. The skies, the everything was glorious because I'm in the middle of summertime. So I had verdant lawns to look at, foliage, crystal clear blue sky in the day, and a clear sky at night. Beautiful. And that is God. Now I have to say, you can't expect God to come and answer your prayers when you don't give God the credit. I see this too often. People don't give God the credit. And yet, in my own life, I've had people say, why do you get your prayers answered all the time? And yet I go and see them taking the credit themselves why something happened, why they were able to get into a parking spot, because they were quick, when they were this, they just don't give God the credit due to Him. God is due everything. God does everything. If we acknowledge that, then God will bless you more. He will respond to your prayers if you abide in Him. Because He doesn't answer the prayers of the wicked now. That's also something you have to realize. But I have to tell you that God answers the same prayers in the same miraculous way as He did thousands of years ago. He does it for everyone today without exception. He does it for everyone who gives Him the proper credit, acknowledges He is God, and who abides in Him.